John
Milius.
Was a surfer, and his nickname when a surfer was Viking Dude because he would surf and have a sword in his hand the entire time. I think if somebody is a surfer and surfs with a sword and his nickname is Viking Dude is the perfect fit to direct this movie.
Not only that, but if you see most of the archery that's done in this movie is him. Because he was the best archer on set. So when they had to have shots that included like an arrow, like the scene with the snake, those arrows are real arrows hitting right next to Schwarzenegger.
There is a scene where the arrow hits the snake and Arnold's like, whoa,
yeah.
wait a minute.
That is Milius trying to murder his actors. So thank God nobody died as far as we know on Conan the Barbarian, but we're going to talk about it all the same today. Right. Join us. Welcome to back to the show. I'm your host, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hey, I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. We do have a Patreon. Check that out. Today, we're going to talk about another film from 1982. Its 40th anniversary. It came out the summer of 1982. It's Conan the Barbarian.
All right. When Conan was merely a child, he was enslaved following the death of his parents and tribe at the hands of Thulsa Doom, the sorcerer and warlord. Conan trains himself to be a cunning and great warrior in order to make his vengeance on Doom as he assembles a unique group of allies in his ongoing quest.
I had imagined the people at Mattel who had the license to make Conan Barbarian saw the final cut and they're like, we can't make kids action figures from this movie. There's an orgy scene, there's bloodbaths, there's nudity and vulgarity.
What could be construed as a rape.
Right. There's rape and pillages in the beginning. We can't do it, so let's concoct a different thing. It's similar to Conan Barbarian, and that's how you got the He-Man universe. Yep. Is from Mattel doing the Conan Barbarian movie.
That's also why you have Conan the Destroyer rated PG, I believe.
Right, yes. So Conan Barbarian was 5 years in the making. What happened was Robert R. Pressman, who was a freelance film producer, wasn't attached to a production company, saw a rough cut of Pumping Iron, really liked the charisma of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and was like thinking, what kind of a movie could I have this guy do? And his friend Edward Summer goes, well, it's obvious, Conan Barbarian. Because Edward Summer, who was attached to film producers, such like Paramount, said, it's Conan Barbarian. Go to the comic book store. And so from there, 1977, all the way to 1982, that's 5 years of durations of Arnold being attached. He loved the project of getting it finally made. 5 years in the making.
And that was the Marvel Comics Conan that he told him to go check out, right?
Yeah.
So that was when they had the license to do kind of the adaptations of those for Marvel. Yeah. Well, not only that, but the idea had been circulating even since the 1970 itself without actually hitting like a ground where it's like, we're going to start making something. It had been circulating for so many years. The stories are very old. They're Robert E. Howard's original stories. He only wrote them. I think he only wrote them for a couple of years. The man only lived to be 30. He passed away due to suicide.
He
had some real difficult times in his life. Yeah. And so I look at, like such a small amount of time to create that character, and then 4 decades pass, and finally we see, you're right, there really is no better person to play Conan the Barbarian than Arnold Schwarzenegger. I can't, for the life of me, even, maybe today I thought Jason Momoa was good in the remake, but like today, we still don't have someone who embodies that character the way that Arnold did, which is why I'm going to overlook the accent.
That's why he doesn't speak a lot of that.
That's why he doesn't. Yeah, I don't think he speaks the first 25 minutes or the last 25 minutes of the film. It's like both.
Right, yeah. There's an interesting movie before he made Conan Barbarian. There was a movie called Hercules in New York, if you can find it. But his entire dialogue is dubbed over and is really super awkward. He's supposed to be Hercules with a chariot in New York City, and it's like 1979. It's a really awful movie. But for Arnold fans, it's one of those like things you find at the convention, like a dub copy or bootleg copy. Like,
yeah, as an Arnold fan, you look for like 3 things. I think you look for the complete Pumping Iron. Yeah. You look for Hercules in New York, and you look for the copy of Batman and Robin where he does the commentary, because he spends 2 hours doing the commentary for the movie where he just describes what's happening on screen, and it's better than the movie. That's the trifecta of Arnold memorabilia.
I gotta check that out. So Mattel morphed He-Man because they couldn't do the Conan the Barbarian. There's a great research, you Google it, there's a great research about the history of He-Man and Conan the Barbarian. The first draft was written by Edward R. Pressman's friend Edward Summer and Roy Thomas, who used to write for Marvel. That's the first draft, was very similar, but just didn't have the punch. They needed somebody else to kind of give a punch delivery, and that's how Oliver Stone came in, because Oliver Stone's agent knew Edward Pressman. And I think the story is Oliver Stone had this great script he was carrying around in a suitcase as a vessel to get work, where people were like, God, this is a good script. And that script was Platoon. Would you do something else? And he would write other screenplays, but continue to hold on to this script of Platoon until he was able to direct it himself, which would probably be another 10 years.
Yeah, well, and Oliver Stone was kind of placed in there as a bigger name. It was a more well-known name to have on the screenplay. They wanted to have a name attached to it so that it would rise above the standard fare, because Sword and Sorcery had been dead for several years at this point. It wasn't happening, and it actually this film only really got going because of Star Wars success. Because a lot of people said we can do fantasy now, and we can actually get nominated for Best Picture. We can make a lot of money with it. We can do fantasy the right way now, and so. Getting Oliver Stone would kind of elevate that property to let people know, no, we're taking the right way about this. This is going to be closer to a Spartacus as a marketing point.
A little bit, right? I think because Oliver Stone's first draft was very like a drug-fueled fever dream.
So it was set in the future. It was post-apocalyptic, and there was a battle against 10,000 mutants.
Right.
I want to see that movie. I don't want it to be called Conan the Barbarian, but I want to see that movie one day.
Well, it's interesting because there is, and Kyle's familiar with it. There was a cartoon in the early 80s called Thundar.
Thundar the Barbarian. Yeah.
Which
my wife was watching the movie yesterday. She was like, this is like Thundar.
Yeah, and I always thought that Conan came after Thundar as an early kid. Before I was even age 5. But I think because of the success of Star Wars, Thundar was able to do it. And if you look at Thundar, it's like he has a lightsaber. He has almost like Chewbacca's sidekick, and he has a spaceship, and it's in the future.
Yeah.
So if you want
that's a closer marrying of the two ideas, Yeah.
So then once Oliver Stone had a draft, they looked for a director. Walter Hill was supposed to do it, and I think Ridley Scott. And Ridley Scott turned it down.
Yep.
And he didn't say why, and we think we know why. It was late 70s. We think we know it because probably to go do Alien.
Well, I think I'd heard that there was success on Alien already that prompted him. Like that he had already made Alien at that point, but early buzz was that it was really good, and that's why they wanted him.
Oh, so he said no.
I believe that was the case because he was looking for something different other than that. This is just what I'd read online and a good source that I trust. But I think that was kind of the case, was that Alien was already in the can, and that was what prompted them to say he can do genre. Let's get him.
Okay.
And it's maybe a question of maybe he chose Blade Runner over this. I don't know, because that would have taken some early prep, I imagine, on Blade Runner.
A lot of because we'll talk about it when we talk about Alien. Ridley Scott loves to do his own storyboards and takes a long time to develop his films. So once Oliver Stone, I think once Ridley Scott turned it down, Oliver Stone's script, they turned to Dino.
Yeah.
Dino De Laurentiis.
And this was, I believe, after a string of non-hits with Dino.
Right,
and he was looking for a hit that's going to get him back into good graces. And I think this was one of the last actual hits that can be considered a full hit of his career for a while. Yeah. And even so, it was it's not a movie that would have been easily marketed as a hit. But
now, Dino has a harsh accent. I can't imagine Edward R. Pressman having a conversation with Arnold, with Dino, and Oliver Stone, and all of them. And 2 out of the 3 people have a tough time with their accents.
And back to the accent of the whole thing, it's ironic that this movie does feature someone being overdubbed, but it's not Arnold. It's Gary Lopez, who played Subutai. His entire performance.
The wizard?
Not the wizard. The younger guy who's firing the arrows.
Oh,
Subutai,
John's friend.
So it was the surfer that he worked with on Big Wednesday apparently didn't have a great voice for acting, because he played himself in Big Wednesday, so he was not really acting, he was playing a version of himself. This movie he was actually performing as a character, and his voice didn't carry the way that it was supposed to on film, so they dubbed over him. So in fact there is dubbing in this movie, it's just not Arnold.
Surprise. So I think if I remember right, watching the documentary of Conan, he was the one that John hired him and said go take some acting classes, and he was like, all these people are better actors than me, but I have a job waiting for me.
Yeah.
He felt weird, but I have a job waiting for me, and I'm one of the worst actors here in the acting class, but everybody else is better. So he's like, it was a little bit awkward, but I was a better archer.
Yep.
So
I think what's so fabulous about that is you have this first big vehicle for Arnold. Like, this is his first actual real movie in a lot of ways, because I'm not going to really count Hercules. It didn't really have a place in pop culture. This is the one that cemented.
Accumulated a lot of fans from Up and Iron.
But he knew about a year and a half in advance that he would be playing this character. So they sent him actually back to keep working out. They wanted him looking stronger than he did when they cast him. But then there was also Arnold wanted to get acting lessons. Arnold wanted to work on his performance. He wanted to make things work. And another reason that's why we got two kind of bigger name actors in James Earl Jones and Max von Sydow cast in the film was that they wanted some bigger acting prowess to help elevate his material. They thought having big guys kind of supporting him would elevate what he was doing. And in fact, that ended up working to both of their credits, because Arnold got trained by James Earl Jones in acting. He helped him out on set, and in return, Arnold helped James Earl Jones work out. He was kind of giving him workout lessons and training sessions. And so just to see a buddy cop movie with those two actors in the 80s would have been great.
Right. Almost Darth Vader's voice, and then you have, Arnold.
Darth Vader.
But it's really funny that there's a time in the career of Arnold needing, let's get some credible actors to put on the headline because we don't think Arnold can stand alone yet. Which in the late 80s, we knew that you just put Arnold Schwarzenegger on the cover.
Well, Arnold then was kind of like how I see people like Dave Bautista today, Channing Tatum today. Actors who are very good when they're placed in the right roles. There are certain things Arnold just may not be capable of doing in the current state that he was in, of course, as an actor. Just like I think Channing Tatum excels when you put him as a Magic Mike, when you put him as 21 Jump Street Channing Tatum. Dave Bautista is great when you give him a role that's worth what he's doing, like Drax in Guardians, or that really great henchman he played in Spectre. Like, put these people in the right roles is setting them up for success. They may never be able to play, an Einstein or something like that in the same way.
So, to branch out the rest of the cast, you have Valeria, what's her?
So that would be Sandahl Bergman.
Sandahl Bergman, who just did the Jazz Singer. And then John, the director, saw her in the Jazz Singer, that she's perfect.
Physical.
Ellie, she could do the physical work for being a dancer. In the movie, she says, "Do you want to live forever?" Which is another line we hear from a lot of other movies, including Starship Troopers. Use that line, "Do you want to live forever?" Now, that is a famous quote from World War I. Commander Daniel Daly, in I think the Battle of Belleau Wood, screamed to his privates before they charged, "Come on, you sons of bitches, do you want to live forever?" And it became infamous quote that had been used all the time in movies, usually military campaign films.
Yeah.
And you use this one, of course, it's from this, she uses it as well.
Yeah, and it only seems to work, I guess, when you're kind of playing against type in some ways. Like the Starship Troopers line of it is very much like you drafted a bunch of children, you want them to die kind of thing. Yeah. Or else when you deal with a culture like barbarians or Vikings, where it's all about, an honorable death, a good death, it kind of matches in there as well.
So if you want to know, it's a real quote. His name is Daniel Daly. He said, "Come on, you sons of bitches, do you want to live forever?"
Well, I do.
Yes. So carry on. Mattel couldn't do it. Thundar. And then if you want to check beginning, if I think that is the Wheel of Pain, well, I call it the Wheel of Gain. Come on, get serious. But it worked too well.
Okay.
I think if you look at the making, they said it was too balanced. I mean, if you just pushed it actually did a full rotation. So they actually had to have people pushing against Arnold.
Oh, to make it look like he was struggling more?
Because
How many
it worked
people,
too
I
well.
wonder?
That's the problem with production is when you're like, dang it, it works too well. There's not much of it's too much of a give.
Let's be honest, though. When you're making a movie, something working too well is a rarity. It's still a problem, but it's a rarity. It's like one of those, like, oh, darn, we have to push against Arnold. Like,
but I would love to see an outtake of like 5 or 10 or whatever extras.
That's what I want to see. I want to see how many people it was. Like, how many idiots does it take to screw in a light bulb? How many guys does it take to push Arnold the other direction?
So one of the reasons I wanted to do this movie, because in 1982 we talked about Tron, which is the beginning of a lot of CG-dominated films. And we talked about a lot of CG. In 82 we had a lot of CG-dominated great movies. This does have a CG, if like when Arnold, Conan's dead and the demons try to capture him. That's kind of a CG. But this is primarily old-fashioned movie making of stuntmen doing dangerous stunts, damn near dying. Arnold almost, getting hurt, broken his nose, and people.
The dog attack when they didn't realize that the dogs are basically feral, and when he's being chased by the dogs at the beginning, that's him really running. He's a little concerned because he did get bit, I think, at the end of that scene.
Yeah, I need a tetanus shot. And then John's famous line throughout making this movie, after so many injuries, "Movies are forever, pain is temporary." To the point where the entire cast and crew is saying this. And so that's why I kind of have a little regard for this, because of all the movies that are CG, this one retains from old-fashioned, just build the sets, go on locations, do old-fashioned movie making and take 20 and put a little bit of danger involved as well.
Yeah, I kind of had a certain anti-nostalgia for this film watching it last night because I was thinking to myself, I don't remember the last time I felt like everything on the movie was real. Like everything was actually taking place, and I pined for that feeling, like where it has the older elegance in the set building of like a Cleopatra and a Ben-Hur, where it's like we're going to build these massive sets and put these on real locations, but then it also kind of had that 80s camp to it, and that Conan kind of exists in a vacuum. It basically restarted an entire genre of film, taking things that had come 20, 30 years prior and just repurposing them into a pulp kind of epic.
Yeah.
And I think I felt this kind of sadness how we don't get these kinds of movies anymore. And I love movies that are laden with CGI. I always see the new Marvel movies opening day and what have you, but I pine for that real tangibility that you feel. Like I felt like I could reach out and touch Conan, that I could reach out and touch the sandstone that he is, walking over and be a part of that. And that's not really the case as much anymore. And it does make me pine for those days.
Right. I think the lull is probably in the second act, even though the second act is heavy action. But I think the lull in the second act, where it's a lot of quiet, very, setting mode, and then, I have Conan dying, and then I bring him back. But I think the first part of the sword, his dad making a sword for him, and how the process, and you get the credits running, and the music. I think the music saves it a lot.
Yeah, I think the music is one of those things that's come basically out of this film and become its own thing. This is one of the most used temp tracks in Hollywood films, where they put a lot of, well, probably not anymore, but back in the day, they would use this as a temp track a lot on other movies until they could get the real one done.
I know, it's like those temporary put it in there.
Yeah, because it conveys the emotion so well of what's being done in each scene. And it does make up for a couple issues I have with some of the sound design. There's a couple moments where how the sound design and mixing leads the music in a little bit heavy, where you can't hear sometimes what the characters are saying as well.
Yeah.
That's not to slight on the music, that's the way that it was mixed and designed into the soundtrack, was that it kind of overtakes the sound of the characters, but I feel the emotion even if I can't hear everything that's being said. And then going back to the physicality of what the sound brings to it as well, is that it feels like an epic movie, even though it very much is in a lot of ways a independent kind of thing. It's a very small edged in terms of its storytelling. Yeah. But I do think the first act of the film is brilliant. I think it's wonderful, and I think Game of Thrones took that sword making for one of their episode openings, because they have almost the exact same kind of elements to that. Yeah. I think, the opening act, the third act are both fantastic. This comes into my big issue with the movie. Normally I say that that most movies could stand to trim 20 minutes. This one I'm kind of going in a both direction. I really like the speed at which the follow-up, Conan the Destroyer, moves at. It's a very fast-paced movie, that one, but it also loses a lot of the subtlety and the nuance that's being done here. I also wish that this movie was either 20 minutes shorter to be more like that, or an hour longer, because I feel like this movie skips a lot of steps in, as he makes these stops on his journeys. I want to have those expanded upon. Like, he stops at the witch's house. It's like a 10-minute diversion scene where he's like, I'm going to have sex with her. She's going to try and kill me. I got to kill her first. Throw her on the fire. We're done. We're moving on to the next part. And it's like, oh, wait, let's stop and breathe for a second at what just happened here. That's what I wanted more of in the film. Is I would have accepted a longer cut of the film, just because I feel like it's almost like a race to get to the next scene. And I really wanted to pause at some of these great scenes. When he dies and goes to the underworld and the demons are attacking, which, by the way, is a callback to the film Qui-Gon from, I believe, 1964, which is a Japanese ghost story.
Yeah.
The marking on the face
very unforgettable,
and stuff.
Yeah.
And then having his ragtag group is also very reminiscent, was supposed to be based on Seven Samurai. He wanted to bring in enough people to kind of have this crew of, like, ragtags that would take on the enemy.
Yes.
So there's a lot of influences there. I just wish the film was longer so we could breathe on some of those, because there's so many great moments that I wish could have been greater if I got more time with them.
Right. I think there's too much of what they want to do is reference what the previous stories. Yeah. Because The Witch is a story, one of the books.
Yeah.
Of him encountering the witch and she turns into a snake. The crucifixion is actually a legitimate story, I think, from the Witch from the Trees, the story of him being crucified and the vultures attacking him. Yeah, and then I think in the book he actually snaps one of the vultures and eats it to survive.
Yep.
So, but then they have the vultures. So I think there's a lot of let's just references because it's in the story. That doesn't really jive very well.
It reminded me a bit at times of how Solo tried to have like a checklist of origins, if you will. How that film, like, I love the Han Solo film, but at times they're like, well, we got to make sure he learns his name. We got to make sure we show how he meets Chewie. Like, that's kind of, this film kind of felt like, well, we got to make sure we reference this story and that story. And the thing is, like, this was, again, before franchise filmmaking was the thing where it's like, if we like this story, we can get to it next time. Like, we can do that next time. There's a lot of similarities with how the storytelling is done in this film and the recent television series The Witcher, because most of those stories were written out of order, and they try to place them into a timeline on The Witcher, and each episode has like references to like a main plot, but then also like a side story. And it gets a little convoluted to the point where The Witcher actually has a website you can look up that'll tell you when things take place, because it's very confusing to watch the show. That's not the case in this as much. It is a straightforward story, but you can see that they're pulling those stories in and trying to tweak them in.
Yes.
And it's like, maybe a few of these could take a breather. They had planned to make 6 films. Like,
they wanted to do like Oliver Stone said in the documentary. He was thinking of it like a James Bond series of Arnold doing these films every 2 years.
Yeah, and it's why I still pine for a King Conan movie. I still really want to see that, a third film with him as like old man Conan, rocking it out, because it's basically hinted at the end of this movie, is that we would see him on the throne one day. But that is a tale for another time. Right. And it's like, I still pine for another return to Conan the Barbarian. I mean, they tried just as recently as a few years back to get that going, and it keeps falling dead. And now it seems like it's probably going to get rebooted as a TV series, which kind of breaks my heart. I really don't think I don't think skipping Arnold is the right call while you still have him and while he still wants to make it, you know?
Right, yes. Because I think for him, it's what started his career, and I think he has a lot of respect.
He still sees it as the role of his lifetime. Like, this is the character he was born to play. And it's like, he wants to make it. He'll probably finance it himself. Let him do it. Like, you know.
It's a great intro there, because you watch him do the wheel of, it's called the Wheel of Pain, it's the Wheel of Gain. But then, I mean, he looks up, and he just looks like Conan.
It's a great introduction to his acting, like, to not his acting, but him as an actor in the film, is because the scene starts with, it's like a Lion King moment when he's walking across the thing, and all of a sudden he's adult. He looks up, and you're like, that's Conan. He's there now. It's such a physically like identical role. Like, to even the paintings, when you look at the old paintings and drawings of Conan, like, that's Arnold. That's there's no one else. That's him. While you have him, you should use him.
But it's interesting that they even in the winter of him going on the wheel of. It's a winter shot. It wasn't manufactured. That's real winter of him going around the circles to show duration of time.
Yeah, it's a good duration of time. I like that a lot.
So it's
actually.
really authentically winter. I mean, him and his with his shirt off going around the wheel. Yeah, but it's also Roger Ebert think it was a metaphor for going school age kids going to school. We were going around and around. He's like, it's a metaphor for adolescents going to school.
It's a metaphor for life.
A metaphor for kids in life, right? You got to do the same thing over and over again.
What's notable too, though, is the origin of this film feels actually more in common. I did a little research on Cull the Conqueror, which was another Robert E. Howard character. The origin of this character in this film is closer to that Cull than it is to Conan, with the parents being killed and being enslaved and such. Seems actually more in line with Cull than it does with Conan, which the two characters are kind of synonymous with one another. They got different variations, but they kind of did the same kind of things. And then there was also, of course, Red Sonja, which I believe is another Robert E. Howard character. I would love to see it. We're in the time period of cinematic universes. If you do another Conan, they should do a Conan film, a Red Sonja film, and a Cull film, and then have them in do one team up movie, because I would pay to see some serious action with that.
Yeah, it'd be expensive to make.
It'd be very expensive, but
you'd probably get a good return out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Overall, I think it's nice to go back to, because I think it's a historical footnote of old-fashioned filmmaking during the time we knew that traditional filmmaking is going away. A lot of computer graphic heavy dominant, like we talk about with Tron, was the gateway. Where it got almost disbanded just from a lot of the technology. Yep. And this is old-fashioned, build the sets from wood and then burn the hell out of them at the end.
Yeah.
And a lot of extras, a lot of extras, and it's old-fashioned, bring it back to sword and sorcery that we loved even the 40s and 50s.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't have it's still not a very popular genre right now, but it seems like it ebbs and flows to a much smaller degree than like Westerns do. Kind of when Westerns go away for a little bit, we'll get a few sword and sorcery, and then they kind of
I think that's why Game of Thrones came out the right time.
Yeah, they got a good time period for that. Right? So, I like I said, I have a few small issues, but I don't have the issues most other people have with the film. I have issues with sound design. I have issues with, I wish the pacing was either shorter or longer, but the 2 hours and 10 doesn't feel like the right cut of this movie.
I want it longer. You have to show him a little more wanderer.
Yeah, I wanted to see just more time to breathe with the characters as they are. But as it stands, I'm not bothered by the Schwarzenegger accent thing. I don't think it's a big issue because the movie itself is inherently a little cheesy. And again, it's kind of like, what movie are you in? It's like when we talk about Keanu Reeves and Dracula. Everyone's overacting in that movie, so I don't mind that he's kind of acting a little hooply.
Well, no,
I don't mind in this movie.
They referenced the Kirk Douglas Vikings film, which is very not historically accurate. It's very much action movie at the time. It's not. It's very almost Dancing on the Camp.
Yeah.
Of what Conan is doing.
And it's like, if that's the movie you're making, though, that's totally fine. Then it works. Like, if you wanted to put Schwarzenegger in a serious, like a truly hard-edged barbarian film, you'd almost have to dub him if he was at this age, because you couldn't get it to work in a realistic sense. But the film is a little campy, it's a little send-up, it's a little pulpy. It's supposed to be. It's based on adventure stories. Like, it's supposed to be that.
I remember
and it works.
Marvel at the mid-70s, their big comic book sellers were the superheroes. It was Count Dracula and Conan.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's some people that are probably in their 50s now that would probably love to go back to see it.
Yeah, exactly. So I enjoyed revisiting. I think I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. It's not one of those regular go-throughs in my house, but when I do revisit it, I always find myself enjoying it. And I do actually think it's kind of a Karate Kid 1 and 2 situation where I think I find myself entertained more by the second film, just because it's got that quick pace.
The first one's better filmmaking.
But the first one is a better made film all around. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. So, have you seen Conan? I heard Conan O'Brien was repolish his funniness because his name was Conan in high school in the early 80s, and he was bullied a lot. Oh, your name's Conan? Kick my ass. Well, then he had to amp up his comedy. That's why he said that's why I'm funny, is because I had to learn I couldn't beat up the guy's named Conan.
Considering he's my favorite late night host, thank you, John Milius. Thank you, Robert E. Howard.
It had to be awkward for him to be named Conan and go in high school in the early 80s.
That's an odd thing. But, there is a 1984 sequel. There's a 2011 reboot to Conan the Barbarian. So let us know down in the comment section below your favorite between those 3 films. And would you like to see us cover one of the other films in this trifecta of Conan, blood and guts, and all the good stuff in between.
Yeah. I remember Comic-Cons, before we go, I remember Comic-Cons, the Frank Rosetta poster corner, whereas his posters were just fascinating. And they get on heavy metal covers, too.
So, absolutely. So let us know your thoughts on the film down below. And while you're down there, please like and subscribe. There are 2 free things that you can do that help support the channel immensely. They make sure that we can stay on the air and you never miss a new episode of the show as it drops. Yeah. Also, check on that Patreon down below. The link's down in the description. If you're looking for the Patreon, as Nick was mentioning. This month, we're closing out June with our top 10 films of 97. We're very much looking forward to joining that with you. If you get to join the Patreon before we have that video up, though, check out last month's. We got our favorite Cronenberg picks with his newest movie, Crimes of the Future, out. We thought we'd go back and dive into our favorite Cronenberg films. So please check that out, and we're going to keep those picks with Kyle and Nick coming at you every single month, as well as some more exclusive episodes on the way. You can find all my film reviews over at GoFilmReviews.com.
You can find my podcast, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts. And Crom, we praise you.
Yeah.
Or the hell with you.
Crush your enemies and hear the lamentations of the women.
Yes.
I'm going to go do that.